Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording. Mic lock. Button is on. Double tap.
Hey friends. Well, it's been long overdue, I know, but I thought I'd do my path part 2. Now, I just want to throw a disclaimer in there that things are going to be a bit dark. We're going to go down a very rocky road because I didn't make any notes about part 1, but part 1 was very soft-centered. It was very getting on that road to, it was that really nice, smooth road, shall we say. It was that nice, smooth road, end of primary school, beginning of secondary school, all that kind of thing. Now, when I was in secondary school, there was a lot of changes. There were things that you could get away with in primary school, but just could not get away with in secondary school. Fights on the playground. Did I mention the playground, friends in primary, friendships in general? I want to make a video on that because that is a very important thing and how you value things. But getting back to primary school, everybody wants to be your friend. And even you don't see even the douchebags. You're friends with douchebags. And you sort of realize it, but you don't realize it enough. It's like, okay, well, I'll be your friend today, whatever. And it's not serious enough to be like, but when you're in senior school, people don't want to be friends with you the same. People don't want to, and the douchebags, you don't want to be friends with douchebags, but douchebags tend to be following you because they can sense that you're a douchebag, and you want the people you want to be friends with don't want to be friends with you, and the people that you don't want to be friends with want to be friends with you. So now we've established that. Another thing about secondary school is people don't understand you the way you think. Let's get into that. Now, people in secondary school, it's like, wow. I mean, this sounds like an iceberg video where we've covered in the first part of this, we covered the tip edge, didn't we? In this part, we're going to cover a little bit more ground. And I don't really want to make autism videos on this channel, but I think because this is like, I told my story, I made my mark of telling my story, and I guess this is like a story time, if you will, once upon a time, blah-de-blah-de-blah and all the rest of it. But it's very different to where I tell my story. I mean, where I am now, very different. I feel that there's a community of people who understand me. But when I was back at school, and I had no internet, I had no Facebook or Messenger, that's another story. I didn't even have, I had a phone, but the phone I had wasn't the best. And it wasn't until I went to college and I got a phone with talks on. Wow, and I didn't have to get people to read messages. Wow, that was a huge thing. Well, before we delve into college, let's talk about school. So in year 7, I was put into the top group. I don't know why they put me in the top group, but I was in the top group. And I was with everybody who was in the top group. We were all the top group. And I struggled. And I felt like I didn't like teacher in class. But it was like, and I didn't like her, especially getting towards year 11, but we'll come to that. That is important. Remember that. And she would push me to like read, but I mean, she would push me, you know. But she never understood me properly. Never understood me properly. I was in a lot of detentions in year 7. A lot of detentions. And when I left year 7, I mean, I didn't understand. I mean, I had a lot of questions. When I went into year 7 as well, the stuff we were learning, and I figured out that I could ask the teachers questions, but they never had time. After the September, October, I would have loads of questions. I would have a list of questions. I'd be watching like thousands of documentaries at home, and I wanted to understand things, and I was starting to build a world of things that I was into, plus other things outside of that. You know, I really, really was very into thunderstorms, volcanoes. But the other thing I was into was how water, how salt left the water and it turned into a gas. And I remember all of that, and Predators and Prey. I loved watching Walking with Dinosaurs and learning about predators and, you know, and all that kind of thing. But there was other people who didn't really understand me, you know, partway through school, because I had a lot of questions. And not, you know, the teachers really couldn't give me the answers. Nobody could give me that. They expected you, once you got past year 7, they expected you to know it. They expected you to be this encyclopedia of knowledge, you know? And when we got to year 8, things started getting a bit more difficult. Now, I was put in a lower group, you know, through year 8. And I learned, you know, a lower group means that we're going to get easier work. People are going to understand. But people didn't understand me as much. And I got loads of detentions, hundreds. And I remember one of the detentions I got was one of the PE teachers because I didn't bring my towel. And he said, right, Stephen, I want you to I want you to explain why you talk to yourself, why you have imaginary friends, all the rest of it. And he never understood. And we had an argument. We didn't have enough time to discuss it. And I think the people that's another thing. Never had any time to fully understand me. No one really took the time to understand. And that's another thing that, you know, I think you need to, you know, but anyway, so year 8 was like really bad. It was, and plus I got bullied in year 8. I won't go into that, but, you know, you get bullied, people are trying to, and then you get, now, I had a couple of care staff, I'm not going to name their names, I'm not going to mention anyone's names, they were fantastic. and I couldn't thank them enough. I kind of, during that moment, and this is a part of autism, I tried throwing them under the bus. Now, not under an actual bus, not a physical bus that you can, but I tried sort of pushing them away, and they were fantastic. They didn't let me push them away. I remember one conversation that one of them had, and they said, "Look, Stephen, the reason we're doing this is to keep you safe. Do you want to be in harm's way?" And I'm like, "No." So they were fantastic with me. And they were brilliant all the way up to the end of school. And anyway, getting back to year 7, because there's a few things that, from primary school. The way you learn, and when you get into year 7, it's like in primary school, people take their time with learning, and if you're a fast learner, good, you learn that, right, you can move on to the next thing, wonderful. With me, it was, wow, that's wonderful, let's move, but I had to learn it and learn it and learn it till I got it and got it and got it and got it. And one of the things, there was 2 things in school that I really loved. That was music, of course, and computers. And I loved those 2 things. In school. And another thing I loved was Star Wars. And that was it. But we didn't do anything that was, I don't remember anything fun and frolic about year 7, to be honest. It was all outside of school. And I went to the hospital 3 times. And they were saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with him. Send him home." They couldn't see the autism. They couldn't see that the doctors were completely blind to it until I got my assessment, which wasn't till when I was in year 10, sorry. Start of year 10. And year 10 was a very strange year. We'll come to it. Because when I left year 7, I started Play Scheme. In fact, I started Playbarn partway through year 7, which was fantastic. It was great because I was learning to socialise. I was learning that there was a community for us. There was, people with different disabilities. But looking back, it was a very strange thing that we discovered, because everybody in that Play Scheme was not like me, but some people were like me. And I think it wasn't till Play Scheme, everybody you met on Play Scheme was like, wow. I remember one guy I met on Play Scheme, and he thought I was the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. And there was a carer on Play Scheme. And in fact, Play Scheme wasn't rubbish. But I felt like it was, it made the summer holidays go quick. You go to Play Scheme and you did arts and crafts and played video games, which you could do at home, but I felt it was in a different setting. And I remember one Play Scheme, this guy I met, he thought I was the cat's pajamas, the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, this guy. I could play rock music on an organ. I made my own music up, but I was playing, rock music. And it was like, there's no one else in that, and I would turn the organ up, I'd be turning the organ up full.
WhatsApp. Now. Yates. Performers Network. 4:53 p.m. I'd
be turning up the organ full whack. yeah, I'd be turning the organ up full blast and making rock music on the organ. And I remember all my friends came and we had this jam. I think someone got on a drum kit or something. I can't remember. But this guy anyway thought I was the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. And I remember we literally spent a whole day talking rock music. And I said, can I have a cassette tape of Sabbath? And he said, yeah, as long as you join in with all the kids for an activity. I was like, okay, cool. So that was the deal we made. If there was an activity I didn't want to do, I think it was like a parachute thing. And he said, if you do this parachute games for 20 minutes with the others, I'll do a Sabbath tape. Cool. And I sneaked the Sabbath tape. But that was in the days before YouTube and stuff. I think now kids just search it, don't they? But anyway, so year 8, I went into year 8, which was an awful year. Now looking back, there was some good stuff, good music. Outside of school was pretty cool, I would listen to a lot of rock music on the weekends and create a lot of rock music on the weekends. I had this tape recorder. In fact, I found the recordings. I had this imaginary band called Massacre, which still exists today, but
8 notifications. 8 notifications.
I'm trying to stop VoiceOver from reading my messages. Where are we? So, anyway, yeah, so year 8 was horrible. I got bullied in year 8 and I had a lot of detentions in year 8, so it was horrible. Nobody understood me, and I got told off a lot and things. So I missed jumped to year 9. Not jump to year 9, jump to year 10. And I remember going to these doctors and they said, we're not just doctors who check your nose and your eyes and your whatever. We're specialised. And I was about 14 years old. At that time, 14, no, I was 15, I think. Yeah, I'd turned 15. And they said, we're not doctors that check your eyes and throat, we're specialised. And I tried explaining to them, the imaginary friends and stuff. And I had a friend who had Asperger's, and he was very different to me. I didn't know fully about me properly, about my autism, didn't know. And it wasn't until, I tried, when I got counselling and everything, but when I got in the car that day, because we waited for a while, I remember the following week I came home from school and I had to go back when they did like a
Notifications.
second
WhatsApp.
part.
9 notifications. 4:59 p.m.
Just a minute, 'cause this is doing my nutting.
4:59. Ask. 8. 7. PQR 8. TUV. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button. Is on. Double.
There we go. So when I did, when I went back for assessment, when I went back, like second part, and I was waiting a while, and I was given this Cartoon Network magazine, and one of the women was all right, but the other one, she was a bitch. She was like this patronizing bitch, basically. And they just gave me the certificate saying I had Asperger's syndrome. And it wasn't until I got in the car, and Mum was like, you know that thing your friend's got? I was like, yeah. She said, like, you've got it too. And I was like, okay. But we love you, Stephen, and there's nothing. I was, well, you know, there is something wrong.
One notification. 2 notifications.
Shut up. I don't want people reading WhatsApp. So I remember going back to school, and I got a counsellor within 7 months. It must have been after Christmas or before, I can't remember. That was before Christmas, and I was in year 10. And she'd sorted 2 things out in the whole time I had sessions with her. The rest of the time, she went and told, anyway, that's besides the point. Anyway, she found this book. She'd always bring books, because I wanted to research what other people, what Asperger's was, you know, we didn't have. It was like this bubble of, the research you had was very low. And I wanted answers straight away. And it just wasn't helping. I didn't fully understand what it was. I knew it wasn't painful. But I wanted to understand, why do people get scared? Why, I wanted to understand the people around me, not what I was. But I think the most important thing is to research yourself, not research other people's, and use that research for yourself. However, I know now a lot of things which I didn't know back then. So, like I didn't know like meltdowns and burnouts, which it's difficult because you go more mute when there's a problem. You find it hard to explain when there's a problem. And things like that. And a lot of people got shocked towards the end of school. But anyway, she gave me this book. And she said, I want you to read this book that I found. How are you going to read it? I said, well, I can't read Braille. I said, well, I can read Braille, but not, that's not really comfortable for me, I said. She said, what would you like? I said, we could get it done in audio. I said, but the person that I know that would do it in audio, I don't know if they would do it. Because we didn't get on. This teacher, he knew I liked computers and things, and he knew I was full of questions. But he didn't know why and didn't understand why. And she goes, well, do you want me to ask him for you? And I was like, if you wouldn't mind. And so she asked the ICT teacher for me. Anyway, he must have had the shock of his life. I think people do get the shock of their lives. And I think the people, and we did tell the wrong people as well, because they would never believe it. But then, who is going to believe it when you get told at like 15? And so then I understood a bit more of what it was, and I'm like, this book helps a little bit, but not much. I think a lot of people also disagreed with the music that I listened to, which was mainly heavy metal. And I kept myself to myself around, I know I had my imaginary friends, but looking back, I didn't, I had a girlfriend for a little while, but she told me a few years ago what I was like. I was like, shit, was I like that at school, But she did, she was fantastic for the time, and I think people, I don't go back for, certain things. I realised that time, whatever. But going back, I feel like people give you bits of the past. And it's like, really? Really? And one of the things that people seem to remember of me is I still seem to explain a lot. Explain, how things are. But I also met another friend who, I won't name on here, someone who was around my time at school. And she remembered me. I didn't remember her to begin with, but she remembered me. Then we remembered each other, but she'd realised something different. Anyway, especially some of the stuff but I think that was the thing. So I think leaving school was difficult. I'll cut to the chase. Leaving school for me was difficult. There was all these different emotions that nobody really tells you about. The scared, angry, happy, whatever. And this one day, I think I had a row with someone, and then everything just came flooding down. And I wanted to sit at the back of the chapel and just be me. But one of the teachers, who I don't want to name, but she was fantastic. And, got everyone together, and everybody that whole day was treading on eggshells, because they knew me. I think because it's sixth form, it's not like year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. By sixth form, you've got to pull together, because everybody in the school is a douchebag. It's not just everyone else below you is a douchebag. There's some people in the school that, in the lower years, that are the cool ones, are the collective ones, and they'll see you you really are. But at sixth form, you've been in that class for all the other years, and it's like you have to look up to each other, and people knew me. People knew my moods. They knew me when I was sad. They knew me when I was pissed off. They knew me when I was angry. They knew me when I was happy, excited. They knew all that. And
for notifications, WhatsApp group now. Yates Performers Network. The Food and Drink Village in Salt and Tar is open for free entry.
Yes, can you just?
Entertainment, hands in a heart.
I don't want to read it.
Voiceover on. 5:08 p.m. Voiceover off.
Right. Good. We're not going to read anything else. What the hell was I going on about? So yeah, in that moment, they kind of knew, and people were worried. But I wouldn't say they were worried. They were kind of scared of how to approach me the whole day. You know, everybody in that classroom, because they'd seen what they'd seen, and everybody just like got together. I still speak to some of those people on FB and stuff, but some of those people I don't speak to. And the head girl, at the end of the day, it was 4:00. The bell went for going, and she pulled me aside and she said, "Stephen, are you really okay?" And I was like, "I've got over it now." I said, "But you know, I was a bit sort of upset." And she said, I know. And she spoke to me properly, and she said, "Everyone's been sort of, you know, a bit wary." And I was like, "I know, I understand." But my piece of advice there is the quiet kid in the class, if someone goes quiet like that, it's a lot worse than an outburst, believe me, a lot worse. You're probably thinking, my word, but it's not. It's a lot worse than what you think, believe me. Just ask them if they're okay. But she was looking out for me anyway, and anyway, so it happened again. I was at our next door neighbour's, just chilling the afternoon, and then all of a sudden, this like wave of emotion just hit me. And again, she knew me. This next door neighbour, she knew me. She knew all my emotions. She knew when I was again. She knew all my, you know. She didn't want to believe I was autistic, but that's another, you know. I'm doing a video on that as well. But I think no one wanted to believe it. You know, why would you want to believe that someone's autistic? But she knew, I think she knew something. She could never click. But she spoke to me, you know, properly, and explained, you know. And I said, "Look, I'm really excited, you know, for the future, but I just don't know what to do. I don't know what this is I'm feeling." You know, she explained how I felt. She said, "Stephen, you look like life has hit you in the face." Well, probably did. Probably bit me on the arse and kicked me in the balls. But that's the thing. We do struggle going with the flow, and we struggle going with change. And I got through college fine. I got through Henshaw's fine. Because everybody there was, I mean, obviously, I don't seem to, you know, I didn't really see it then, but everybody there is in the same boat as you. So it's fine. You know, it's not just visual impairment. There's other stuff there, you know, and you speak to people about Henshaw's, and it's a huge barrel of different things you have there. But all specialised schools and colleges are the same now. But I think, I don't know. Anyway, moving on very swiftly to when I left Henshaw's and started Hugh Baird. And I ploughed through the first diploma really well. I ploughed through the national diploma. I managed to plough through that. And we were going to look at a university. Well, I didn't want to leave Hugh Baird. I was struggling. And then it's like, what do I do now? Where do I go now? There's just nothing for me. There was no community. And then I was going to go to John Moore's uni, and I realised, oh, that's not for me. I need to get my maths and English, and I also need an assessment. I need to do an assessment, and literally, my final year at Hugh Baird burnt me out mentally. It really mentally burnt me out the last year because my exam was waylaid, and I was going to do another year academically, but I just wasn't in the right place at the time, and I was doing something else. And then I couldn't go back, and I couldn't do this course, and I couldn't do that course. And there was everything stopping me. I didn't have this, and I didn't have that, and I'd have to do this, and I'd have to do that. And I just thought I couldn't get onto it. I couldn't do this, and I couldn't do what I needed for it. And I really wanted to. I remember going in to Hugh Baird College. I remember looking at various different course packages and trying to do every single one that met my eye. And I thought maybe doing another music course maybe, but I don't know. And anyway, I got kicked out the youth service very same year. So I couldn't do a course. I was getting kicked out the youth service. You get to the age of 25 and everyone really, really gives you a kick up the arse then. Leaving the youth service is hard. And they say, oh, we're not going to kick you out. They do. They give you the kick, and it's horrible. They've got no time, they've got no money. They give you the same BS stuff. It used to be, before that, they just used to say, I'm sorry, we can't take you anymore. That's what they used to say. But then they changed it. Oh, we've got no time, we've got no money. And the reality of it is they've got no... it depends what sort of safeguarding they've got covered, and they can't, it's all and arias into what you come under, and you then becomes that issue arousing of, oh, well, you're an adult, and there's children, and it becomes a Minari. But the dream group that we had going, a lot of us elders there that were sort of, I know there was a couple that was, one of them was about 26. He was like the eldest. And the youth leaders never saw us as a problem. We used to be there, we just used to sit off with our iPads and iPhones most of the time on the computers and help the youth workers and so on. And I was like, I know I'm 25, but we should be able to decide when we want to go. We're not a threat, are we? We're not a threat to the service. I didn't see that anyway. And what happened to our rights of being a young person staying a young person as long as we want? What happened to those rights? That went out the window. So you're told all these things, but you're not given all of the stuff, and you're only the time, like, day services, daycare was a very different thing back then. Now, a lot of daycare services, they want people to get their MVQ level 1, some of them. You know, a lot of them are doing media services and all the rest of it. And, you know, and we've done music festivals, and we've done all that with other things. But a lot of these communal groups, a lot of these community groups are literally, they've literally killed off some of the daycare services anyway. Because you go to a group for a few hours and everyone just chills and does their thing, and so on and so forth. But it's like, anyway, so I wasn't, anyway, to cut a long story short, I did another year at Hugh Baird. I got my secondary assessment, which I'd asked for, because me and Mummy, we had a bit of an argument. And an ex-girlfriend who got in the way. And I got my assessment in the end. And I really wanted it, and so glad I had it. I learned so much about me, so much. But unfortunately, I've learnt a lot more about me, which is not very great. And I guess you have to have the freedom and the desires you want. You have to learn that responsibility, it all comes at a price. This sounds like my other video that I made for my other channel, where I said, I've not put it out yet, where I said about people being the products. And I guess that's what elderly parents should be saying now. If I was an elder, I'd be saying, things do come at a price. Even if you haven't paid for something, if you go on social media or whatever, these things do consume you at time. And if you go with, if you have a girlfriend, if she starts consuming you in a way, like, I don't mean sex, by the way, that's another thing altogether. But you know what I mean? If they start sort of treating you in an abusive manner, you know, that sort of, you learn all, like, you learn that money is a big thing. You learn that trust is a big thing. It's a bigger thing than money. Believe me, it's a bigger thing than money. And people abuse it. Because you trust somebody, and then it's like, hold on a minute. They sort of realize you've got a vulnerability. You know, and I've had this thing where people who are not just fully sighted, but people have got, I mean, everyone's on the spectrum to some degree, but people who have got nothing wrong with them, they've got all their faculties there, they see a vulnerability. And, you know, and I've had people who have literally helped me out. you know. But to somewhat degree, it's good to look out for those people. And getting back to school, the school kids, if you're in, it doesn't matter what year you're in, if you've got a representative of that form, they should be the one who looks out for the most vulnerable member in the class. Because it's, you know, if they're seen as a person who represents your classroom, then they should represent you, not necessarily represent you, but necessarily they should literally they should basically have your ass, basically. Because it goes a long way. And I know, not just in school, I knew there was a few people in mainstream college who would look out for me. And you know, it was just a thing they did. It was just part of their nature. I mean, I had I've had it where, you know, there'll be people who you know, we'd work on other projects together, you know. Not just play drums or guitar, but there'd be times when we'd listen to something and what have you. There was a DJ in the class who, pretty shy guy, he was, and he was very helpful, and I really liked his music and he really liked my music. And we'd give each other loops. I've lost a lot of his loops because the hard drive corrupted, but we used to give each other loops and stuff. And I did some drum breaks for him and stuff, and stuff. We didn't have each other's contact details, but when we saw each other, he would, play some stuff and that, you know. And sometimes I would ask what he's listening to, and sometimes he'd put the headphones on me and I'd be stood at his laptop watching him, and it was like, he was just this amazing guy. I thought he was a magician. I don't know what he thought I was, but I thought he was definitely a magician. This guy. I remember watching him. I've never seen anybody like him. I think we've met again, but apparently he said, "Oh, mate, you got me through that year." I was like, "Did I? I don't remember what he did really." He's like, but I think it was because we were both into electro music. I'd just got into electro music. It was my second year, but I was actually getting into new music at that time. And I really found this guy inspiring. And it was this one day, like I said, can I wear headphones? And he put the headphones on me, these really expensive headphones, which he had because he was a DJ and everything. And I would just be stood there watching the screen and listening to the beats and listening to all different electro tunes. And it was like, wow, because he was originally a dubstep producer, but then it was like, and he's like, dubstep and garage and deep house and stuff. But anyway, another little piece of advice I want to give is for teachers, and this is understand the kids that you teach. It goes a long way, really, really does. People who ask questions, you start to learn that they might be a bit slow later on down the school. So give them a bit of extra time, at the end of the day or something. Especially if you want them to succeed. I know one thing I didn't mention was I had my pretend businesses, as you know, and we had like a study period or something. I can't remember what it was. And she was covering, and she said, "Right, you can do whatever you want, Stephen, as long as you ask for spelling in the classroom." So I was doing this pretend letter. What was it? I think someone had taken the credit card or something. Anyway, I wrote this letter. Dear blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I wrote this letter and the teacher turns around and says, "Right, Stephen, I don't just want you to save this, I want you to print it out." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, fine." I said, "Look, miss, are you sure?" I said, "It's just going to be a waste of paper, If I save it to the network, it'll be fine." Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I just want to read it properly, hard copy. Okay, I'll print that out. Next thing I know, I'm getting pulled into by the head of English. "Stephen, this is the best bit of work I've ever read. Best piece of work I've ever read." I'm like, well, it wasn't really work, to be frankly honest with you, But yeah, I think it's a thing, that if I wish that I'd, had to build a pretend business in school and learnt that way, or because a lot of the stuff I was taking or trying to take outside the classroom and into my office or into my radio station or whatever I was doing outside of the classroom, I was trying to put a bit of that in. Because it goes to a dinner table discussion if you start, if you do a pretend and play activity and all of a sudden you start bringing up, I remember I was doing a news round thing and I was making this thing about how people, if you go with guns blazing or something, you make those people listen. And my mother was like, "Stephen, what is that you're talking about?" I was like, "Mother," if you go in with machine guns and stuff, people will listen to you. You can't just go in there and scream at them. And she's like, Stephen, you're right, but where have you got this from? I was like, such and such mentioned in the history lesson. We were doing about the Luddites or something, and I really brought that home because I really liked that. I really liked the whole protest movement thing, how you take something away and then all of a sudden people come in and they protest. A bit like what happens, and it happens in a lot of culture. And then the last bit of advice I've got is for the parents, for the mums and dads, yeah? And if your kid starts talking to themselves, don't tell them to stop doing it. Don't tell them it might be their way, it might be, there's a lot of questions, but instead of getting frustrated and upset with it, think, do you know what? It's going to be better than self-harm. Much better than self-harm. Because the getting out of the system, you'd rather hear your kid talking to themselves rather than a silent kid who then leads themselves to whatever dark stuff that's out there. I'm sure you know. If you're a parent, then I hope you know. That's all I'm saying on that. There's a lot of research out there. And another thing to add that, you can always take note, and you've got voice recorders built into your phones nowadays. You've got cameras built into your phones that have got, microphones. You've got note applications. You can take notes and all the rest of it. You can get pens and paper and scribble stuff down. And then later, when you're having a discussion, you come like, oh, sweetie, what were you talking about in your bedroom last night? It was a fantastic game, but what were you learning about at school? It comes into a whole discussion, and then you can be like, oh, do you know what? That did happen. Yeah. Say if they start, they're playing with the figures and they start doing a movement where it gets a bit political, because you start, well, do you know what? Actually, there are people at this moment protesting against such and such, and it does exist and it does happen. I remember when I was a little kid and I was about 8 years old, and I was playing Slaves and Masters. Okay? Slaves and Masters, and at the end, I thought the slave master had to have a change of heart, I didn't like being this bad person in the end. And I remember my dad saying, Stephen, what were you doing out there? I said, I was playing slaves and masters. And in the end, the slave master turned good. And he said, you know what? He said, that actually happens. I was like, what do you mean it actually happens? I thought, slave masters, I thought they just carry on being bad. Well, not really. Some people see the errors of their ways and they change, And that's the thing, that it's important to teach your kids stuff like that. Baddies can turn into goodies, or the opposite way around. Goodies can turn into baddies, or they can turn into goodies and turn into baddies and then check. It's really, really important to teach that sort of thing, I think, because you learn a lot of stuff, especially when you start like reading books like Star Wars and stuff. You get a lot from that, I think. I don't know if kids get into Star Wars now. There's always new stuff, isn't there? I don't think kids get into Star Wars now, but Star Wars was a thing for me when I was growing up. And what I liked about Star Wars was the battle scenes, wow. But then I got into the world that was in there. I got right into the galaxies and the stormtroopers and the the Jedi Knights, and it really, really got into a thing. And also around that time, we'd started reading Harry Potter. And that was a very different time. Because when I started on the Harry Potter books, it was a very new thing. It was like, wow. And the Harry Potter books, to me, it was a different, I think it was me actually sort of seeing that there was a world unfolding that we were learning about, and that world was progressing. And it was like, wow, there's more to this than what meets the eye. Anyway, I'm going to finish on that.
Voiceover on. 5:40 p.m. 8, 7. PQRS 8. TUV. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording. Finish recording.